Good afternoon or good evening, depending on where you might be. My name is Kevin Michael Grace, and this is the KMG show. I'm sorry about the late start. Ah, my computer would not recognize my microphone, and it took me about 10 minutes to figure it out. Once again, my apologies. So let's start off with Chicago, that toddling town, as it is known. It erupted in vibrancy, peaceful protests, and let's see, from Zero Hedge, hundreds of mostly peaceful protesters swept through the Magnificent Mile and other parts of downtown Chicago early Monday, smashing windows, looting stores, confronting police, and at one point exchanging gunfire with officers, authorities said. There's a tweet from @BostonKey says local fake news calls this a peaceful protest. As the Chicago Tribune reports, officers had stopped several people on Lake Street near Michigan Avenue when shots were fired from a passing car around 4:30 a.m., nearly 5 hours into the widespread vandalism. Another tweet here with a video. There's a caravan of dozens of cars filled with looters hitting Chicago's luxury storefronts. No officers were shot, but a squad car was hit. It's not known if anyone in the gunman's car was shot. Police made a lot of arrests and recovered at least one gun. Luxury department stores were ransacked as hundreds of looters caused mayhem in response to the police shooting of an armed suspect in Englewood. Police sent to respond to the looting were physically attacked, prompting authorities to, well, next story here. It has to do with the bridges. And bridges were raised. Yeah, that's right. They drew up the bridges, just like in medieval times, to keep the raiders out. This is from DNYUZ. Chicago officials raised bridges and suspended some train and bus service Monday morning after unrest and looting caused widespread damage in the city's downtown overnight. Videos that were circulating on social media showed the early morning scenes of hundreds of people in the streets, dozens of police officers looting, and confrontations with the police. Some of the videos, people can be seen entering various businesses, and local TV stations showed storefronts vandalized. The Chicago Transit Authority said Monday morning that at least half a dozen bus and train lines were shut down at the request of public safety officials. The city's Office of Emergency Management and Communications alerted residents of street closures early Monday morning due to police activity. And how's the mayor reacting to this? Lori Lightfoot, as she is called. According to Breitbart, she is facing criticism from an outraged city after she devoted personal attention to clearing a beach party from the lakefront, but could not stop looters from ransacking the Magnificent Mile and other retail districts. On Saturday, Lightfoot tweeted a photograph of a gathering near Lake Michigan featuring a large group of shirtless, swimsuit-clad men enjoying the beach at Montrose Beach, near the city's alphabet-friendly Boys Town neighborhood. And the mayor tweeted, "It's called a pandemic, people. This reckless behavior on Montrose Beach is what will cause us to shut down the park." I'm looking at the picture here, and an hour and a half later, Lightfoot added she had personally overseen the clearing of the party. In case you were wondering, I stopped by to see for myself. It's being addressed. The city critics accused the mayor of having parties on the beach. That isn't our problem right now. The F tweeted, "I love women in leadership, especially minorities. Of course you do. But Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot is a disaster." In the same weekend, a shooting involving policemen's rushed millions of damages downtown. She shuts down a gay party on Montrose Beach. Enough. Citizens are scared. Lightfoot later told reporters that she had a very robust plan to protect the city from further looting. She told troops in Chicago, period, full stop, on Trump should, she said, focus on gun control instead, because these stop. And what is what's happening? It appears the mayor of Portland, Ted Wheeler, is kind of fed up. It's his project. It's set fire to a police precinct and blocked the exit while officers were inside. This is going on for over 60 days. When you commit arson, he said, with an accelerant, an attempt to burn down a building that is occupied by people you have intentionally trapped inside, you are not demonstrating, you are attempting to commit murder, Wheeler said. Again, this has been going on for over 60 days. Don't think for a moment that you are, if you are participating in this activity, you are not being a prop for the re-election campaign of Donald Trump, because you absolutely are. You are creating the B-roll film that will be used in ads nationally to help Donald Trump during this campaign. If you don't want to be part of that, then don't show up. Apparently the memo has gone out among the Democrats about this, that the rioting was fun. We didn't get the coup d'etat. We didn't get the army takeover that we wanted, so shut it down. In Seattle, where they have voted to defund the police, it turns out, as the mayor knows very well, the city of Seattle is not in charge of the police. In fact, the mayor was on the law enforcement side when a consent decree was signed with the Department of Justice, and a judge, this is from Seattle City Council Insight, Judge Robart warns the City Council to watch its step in defunding Seattle Police Department. He wrote, the court advises the City of Seattle to remain mindful that the consent decree remains in full force and effect, as the Seattle City Council acknowledged when it expressly asked the city attorney, that would be Mayor Durkin now, to notify the court about the CCW ordinance. Yeah, how about that? Mayor Durkin thought it was just wonderful when the Department of Justice took over the Seattle police. Apparently they were doing their jobs too robustly, or some such thing. And the New York Times clearly has got the memo as well. This is a story from Nellie Bowles. Abolish the police. Those who survived the chaos in Seattle aren't so sure. What's it like when a city abandons a neighborhood and the police vanish? Business owners describe a harrowing experience of calling for help and being left all alone. Was the New York Times describing this harrowing experience weeks ago during the halcyon days of the Chaz or the Chop or whatever you want to call it? Faisal Khan was being told by the news media and his own mayor that the protests in his hometown were peaceful with a block party atmosphere. But that was not when he saw through the windows of a Seattle coffee shop. He saw encampments overtaking the sidewalks. He saw roving bands of masked protesters smashing windows and looting. Young white men wielding guns would harangue customers, as well as Khan, a gay man of Middle Eastern descent who moved here from Texas so he could more comfortably be out, as of course, as we know, homosexuality is outlawed in the state of Texas. And there are rather savage punishments for those who infringe that law. So no, as I say, the word is out. The riots have become counterproductive. This is a high note in gaslighting from Santa Clarita, California, and it has video of the police holding rather fearsome-looking rifles, and 3 black teenagers were being attacked by a homeless man, and witnesses called for help. When police arrived, they pointed their guns and arrested the kids who needed their help, terrifying on brand. Exhausting. Okay. Here's another tweet. The kid's mom, Tammy Collins, said homeless man attacked the kids with a knife, and multiple 911 calls were made alerting the cops. The kids were victims, but cops said they feared for their life because black kid had a skateboard, which can never be used as a weapon. We are seriously supposed to believe that a homeless man attacked 3 black teenagers, because it's not like the opposite of that. The direct opposite of that is something that happens, on a regular basis of the streets of America. Let's go to the chat here. Respectable commenting name says, look, this is all fine. Raising drawbridges to prevent the barbarians from sacking your downtown isn't a problem. The real threat is people going to the beach. Well, this happened in the Miracle Mile in Chicago, I think around the time of the vibrancy of Baltimore and Ferguson, Missouri. Now, one wonders how long those shopkeepers will care to remain on the Miracle Mile, because it's pretty clear what the priorities of city council are. Dems lost all cities, says DeBreas. Well, look, they tolerated this for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks. And, now they're getting tough, are they? It's a well-known precept in dealing with rioters that you hit fast and hard right at the beginning, because if you don't, then you risk losing control of the situation. Control of the situation has been lost in Portland and many other major American cities for weeks. Let's see. Contra Cus is the most amazing part of all of this is that the liberal in these ransacked cities will vote to keep all of those responsible for the chaos in power. I remember the critic. It wasn't so much political as it was aesthetic. That Richard Nixon was simply too United States. Well, Richard Nixon was, Tom Cruise compared to Lori Lightfoot, who, as I say, is genuinely terrifying. William Hicks liked my review of Zardoz. Went exploring clips and was happy to be reminded of Beethoven's beautiful 7th second movement. Try to purchase the DVD, nothing in stock. Well, as I said, I recommend, the Twilight Time videos, they're typically issued in editions of 3,000, which sell out quickly, and then you end up paying $100 for them. You get there to do that. Actually, they're not all that expensive, really. Let's see, Zardoz is where it's derivated from. One thing about The Wizard of Oz, I remember this is considered to be a great family movie, and a few years ago, National Review, they put it on their list of great conservative movies. The Wizard of Oz is an atheist allegory. It is particularly anti-Christian. I mean, it could hardly be more obvious. Lives trying to escape, but there's no escape for them, because the Wizard of Oz, God, it's all made up according to that book and that movie. Halper makes a amusing comment about the mayor of Chicago, resembles a post-transition James Baldwin. Chocokin66 says Apple doesn't include DVD player in their MacBook anymore. No, and this is quite deliberate, because it was Steve Jobs' view that he was not going to facilitate people playing media that was Apple media. All media is shot from the Apple Store, or whatever they call it now. Manfred von Thistlebaum said, I don't know, some of these really more popular than others, and it's difficult to know how popular they're going to be. I don't know how many, thousands of a company like Arrow in Britain. I don't know how many, thousands of a company like Arrow in Britain would make, but reviewed Blu-ray. How much money do you want for that? No, sorry, I'm not paying $100, $150 for a Blu-ray. Okay, let's move on to the next story, which is the pathetic fallacy of COVID-19. You may have heard about the insane leadership, Premier of Victoria, State of Victoria, earlier today? This virus is wicked. It doesn't discriminate. It does not stop. Wow, it's like the Terminator. And young or old, its impacts are brutal and potentially lifelong. After filming this, Sarah's condition deteriorated again, and she returned to hospital. Viruses are not ridiculous, ugly campaign. I'll just call it F cancer. Okay, ooh, take that, cancer. Cancer is indifferent. Cancer doesn't care. Viruses don't care. Diseases don't care. Viruses don't care. Diseases don't care. I believe, and it came along rather late in the day in the COVID-19 panic and the sanitary dictatorship, that it's just a question of willpower. That if we show enough willpower, if we maintain a united front, we will show this virus what's what. Yeah. How do you like them apples? Novel coronavirus. It's absolutely preposterous. And on August the 4th, the premier, he in Melbourne, completely deserted. Apparently $500,000 in fines. This is or should be a revolutionary situation. But I guess there is nothing with which we will not put up. We get a similar story here from British Columbia. We are getting more cases, as they like to say. Now, these cases are not being treated in the hospital. Deaths have pretty much stopped. Let's see, Justin McElroy writes at CBC, BC is no longer a model for COVID-19 prevention and getting vaccine prevention and panic going. It's in Canada or the entirety of the United States. Ooh, the United States. Boo! About 10 a day to more than 40. The number of active cases has more than doubled, reaching levels not seen since May. Outbreaks are now widespread enough to require the self-isolation of more than 1,500 British Columbians. There are now more active cases per capita in BC than Ontario. In other words, it's not good. The province back in June and July was right on the knife edge, says Daniel Coombs, a University of BC mathematician who has been helping the provincial government with its modeling for COVID-19 since the outbreak began. It turned out that it didn't take much of a spark to ignite a fire. Okay, all right. Again, how many people are being hospitalized? How many people are dying? Okay. Here's the latest from my province of British Columbia. BC has announced 131 new cases of COVID-19 since Friday. Provincial Health Officer Dr. Bonnie Henry said on Monday there were 50 new cases recorded from Friday to Saturday, 37 between Saturday and Sunday, and 44 between Sunday and Monday. We need to do better collectively to stop these exposures from happening. We just have to stare down the virus, people. We just have to exert our will. The total number of cases has now surpassed 4,000 and is at 4,065. Yes, again, in a province of 5.1 million people. Experts say BC is at another critical juncture as it tries to limit the spread of coronavirus in the province following a week of increasing infections. And what about deaths? What about deaths, huh? Because we were all being, scared to death not all that long ago with the idea that we were all going to die. So if this has now become a super crisis, how many deaths have there been? Why don't you lead with that? There have been no new deaths for the 10th straight day. How about that, huh? There have been no new deaths for the 10th straight day. Now, what does that tell us? It tells us that COVID-19 is not a particularly dangerous virus to young people or middle-aged people or even people who are not exceedingly geriatric. But then again, this has been known for months upon months. And journalism has changed so much. You notice that, I see that I'm blocked from Ellie Murray. What a shame. What a shame. She tweeted, British Columbia, what are you doing? You had things so nicely under control in June, dot, 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 crying emoji. Fewer clap faces, clap. Bigger clap space. Yeah, okay. There remains the possibility BC avoid the type of widespread second outbreak recently seen in so many American states, but the rapid increase of last month is cause for concern. With little certainty getting back to the 5 to 15 daily cases seen in May and June. Yeah, it's almost as if herd immunity doesn't exist. It's on people. Dun, dun, dun. The provincial increase over the last month is overwhelmingly concentrated in young people. Yeah, that's a good thing, not a bad thing. Of the 893 COVID-19 cases recorded in BC between July 6th and August 6th, 2/3 have been in people under the age of 40. The majority are in their 20s. In other words, people who have essentially nothing to worry about. By contrast, less than 12% of cases in the last month have been in people over the age of 60. Again, that's a good thing. COVID fatigue does play a role, particularly in things like long weekends where people are just wishing this would be over, said UBC psychiatry professor Stephen Taylor, who specializes in the psychology of pandemics. They hear the numbers are down, and so they get out in mass gatherings, and that's where they're infecting each other. And so, if they're not getting sick, what difference does it make? People go to a party and they might know half the people there, but there's going to be people that you don't know. Oh my God, improperly vetted parties. I wasn't counting on that becoming one of the major evil events of 2020, but there you go. Oh, it's true that nobody under the age of 40 has died from the coronavirus in BC. Hence the reason deaths have slowed in the province, even as active cases have doubled. That's what's called in journalism burying the lead. But at the same time, younger people can spread the virus before realizing they have it and can also develop serious health issues of their own. Oh, I guess that's why they're not in the hospital, and that's not why they're not in ICU. The disease doesn't discriminate. Again, it's like a person. It's the pathetic fallacy. Once again, this disease does not discriminate. As cases spike among young people, the weekly average of people over the age of 50 getting COVID-19 has not been increasing. Again, that is a good thing. Taylor said the increase in cases has likely raised anxiety levels enough. No, it's the media that has raised anxiety levels enough, so that there would be significant buy-in for further efforts to control COVID spread. If there is a significant second spike, second spike, then I would expect the genie would go back into the bottle very quickly, he said, or he hoped, perhaps. But as the final month of summer approaches, though, two other decisions could quickly approach for the government. One is whether there should be further rules on masks, adding to the transit requirements put in place across much of BC this week. The other will be whether the province's current approach to reopening schools in September should be modified. I've been saying this since the beginning of the pandemic, with the possible exception of May and June, said Coombs. We're entering a critical 2 weeks. Okay. Got to keep the panic going. Got to keep the panic going. We can't have British Columbians not in a panic. I don't know. This isn't going to bring down Donald Trump. It's not going to bring down Boris Johnson. So what precisely is the point, other than public health experts, soi-disant experts, throwing their weight around? Paul Joseph Watson reports at Summit News, the impact of global coronavirus and its lockdown is set to plunge 100 million people into extreme poverty, warns a new report by the Pulitzer Center on Crisis Reporting. The report appears to pin the blame on COVID-19 itself for the economic impact, yet the actual culprit is discovered to be the restrictions put in place by governments in response to the pandemic. From the report, with the virus and its restrictions, up to 100 million more people globally could fall into the bitter existence of living on just $1.90 a day, according to the World Bank. That's well below any reasonable conception of a life with dignity, the UN Special Rapporteur on Extreme Poverty wrote this year. And it comes on top of the 736 million people already there, half of them in just 4 countries: Ethiopia, India, Nigeria, Congo, and Bangladesh. The report notes that the impact of the lockdown on the poor in countries like India was so abrupt and punishing that their Prime Minister, Narendra Modi, begged for forgiveness. The report will stir up further debate as to whether the global lockdown will prove more deadly than COVID-19 itself, with extreme poverty being directly linked to death and shortened lifespans. According to research published by Imperial College London and Johns Hopkins University, about 1.4 million people are expected to die from untreated tuberculosis infections due to the coronavirus lockdown. Experts have also warned that hundreds of millions or even millions of people could die in the longer term as a result of the lockdown, preventing them from receiving treatment for cancer and other serious illnesses. Yeah, it's a timely reminder that the main cost of the lockdowns favored by liberal policymakers across the world will not be people in the West, but those hovering just above the poverty line in the developing world, writes Toby Young. Thanks to the misguided enthusiasm of Western governments for imprisoning entire populations in their homes, thereby triggering a global recession, tens of millions of people will die of starvation in low-income countries. I don't know. I'm not saying that the leadership of the West decided on a worldwide campaign to cull the weak, but that is the way that it has turned out. Who are the weak? First, the very aged, and then people with cancer and other conditions, and then the teeming hordes of the third world. And COVID-19, not the disease itself, but the panic attendant upon it, is going to thin the ranks of the weak everywhere, thereby saving governments an enormous amount of money. Oh, yeah. Remember rock and roll? Remember the spirit of rebellion? Well, it turns out that even in the midst of panic, some bands are out there playing, and this is terrible, 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 terrible. A consequence of sound, tweeted, thousands of bikers turned out to watch Smash Mouth play a concert in the middle of a pandemic. Yes, because everybody knows that the spirit of rock and roll is one of meek compliance. How dare you? How dare you? That life as we knew it is over. It's absolutely over. And yeah, can't have people getting together to listen to music, can't have people going to the beach, because no more fun. Fun is no longer allowed. Let's see, Toby Young in Lockdown Skeptics, he writes about love in the time of COVID. It's illustrated with a picture of Matthew Reeves and Kerry Russell in The Americans, the TV show about 2 undercover Soviet agents living in America in the 1980s, posing as a suburban couple. That's like being a lockdown skeptic in a nation of bedwetters. He describes how he launched a dating section in the forums of Lockdown Skeptics called Love in a COVID Climate, and within hours it had been invaded by trolls posting satirical comments. He lists some of his favorites, and I'll read one. After a demoralizing divorce, I was, like many, reinvigorated by the Brexit movement, only to be let down by Boris in this mask debacle. Looking for Albion-loving lady, 35 to 50, who would be open to dressing up as Winston Churchill and spanking me with a cricket bat while I sing Land of Hope and Glory, no snowflakes need apply. Yeah, Winston Churchill, the Blitz spirit. You know, they had concerts during the Blitz. Yeah, they did. Now, concerts might have to be suspended because of an air raid, but people went about their business. I'm told, I've read that there was a lot of fun to be had in London during the Blitz. I gather it was something of a debauch, with people believing that since the end was nigh, they might as well enjoy themselves while they can. You know, it wasn't simply a matter of being killed in a bombing raid. There was structural damage to many thousands of buildings, and it was not unusual for someone to be walking down the street and a piece of masonry to detach itself from the building and fall down on your head, killing you instantly. But the people of London did not repine. Cases increasing, hospitalizations falling. Yes, that's the story throughout the West. Yesterday, 1,062 people tested positive for COVID-19, up from 758 in the previous 24 hours. Anything to worry about? No. According to yesterday's Sunday Times, the number of people in hospital with COVID-19 has fallen by 94% since the peak of the pandemic. Hospital staff are treating about 1,067 coronavirus patients a day in England, compared with about 17,000 a day in the middle of April, says NHS England. The crisis is over. It's over. And yet our leaders are determined to keep the crisis going forever. I mentioned last week that Dr. Theresa Tam is saying, oh, well, the crisis could extend into 2022. Again, if the crisis extends much longer in Canada, to give one example, there won't be a Canada anymore. To give one example, I read that Alberta is now a have-not province. Given that Alberta was the leading contributor to Canada's equalization system, there's no more equalization system in Canada. They're not going to be able to take any money from Alberta, Saskatchewan, and British Columbia. It will simply have to currency here. We do not have money printer go. Nope. And Canadian media, which is quite possibly the most useless in the world, is whistling past the graveyard. Where's the money going to come from? Don't worry about it. Wasn't Canada in very serious economic trouble? How is it going to weather this storm? Don't worry about it. Justin Trudeau's plan is to hide under a pile of blankets and hope that everything turns out all right. That's his plan, folks. That's his plan. You know, maybe part of the reason for pushing the COVID-19 panic in Canada is that it distracts people. It takes away attention from the seemingly endless number of scandals, Liberal Party scandals. That, oh yeah, we see that Katie Telford's husband is a senior official on this company which got a contract, one of the COVID-19 contracts. So this follows what we learned about the We Foundation, which is very closely tied. In fact, it paid, $500,000 to Justin Trudeau's mother and his brother. Let's check in with Alex Berenson. According to the Centers for Disease Control, since February 1st, 45 American kids under 15 have died of COVID. 13,088 have died of all other causes. Since February 1st, 11,371 Americans under 55 have died of COVID, most with serious comorbidities per day in New York City, and it goes like that. Yes, someone suggested to Berenson, the default Mayor Lightfoot, it's called a pandemic, people. He responded, if only she was 1/10 as outraged by the 100+ murders in July. Yeah. Let's see. It's supposed to be a Democratic convention coming up, but I guess it's not going to be a convention. And Joe Biden is going to amaze the world with his Veep selection, who's got to be a woman Oh, let's see. Secret Service interrupts Trump press conference, doors locked, shots near White House. Didn't Trump say the other day that you might not see me for a while? Does he know something that, well, he obviously knows a lot of things that we don't know. Does he know about some sort of attempt to storm the White House and kill him? Jim Kunstler writes, if he actually makes it through the Democratic, mostly virtual convention to be held sort of in Milwaukee next week, but really on the internet, Joe Biden's acceptance speech will not be a live event. Instead, Biden's head will be clamped in place, as in a Civil War era photograph, so that the audience won't see his earpiece while an aide feeds him his lines. They wouldn't dare rely on the candidate reading off a teleprompter. And you know what? It still won't work. They'll have to cut and paste the video so drastically it will look like an early edit of Ed Wood's 50s classic Plan 9 from Outer Space. One has a sense that a whole lot of scrambling is going on behind the scenes in DNCville this week, leading up to the party's dreaded coronation, and in other places too, such as Bedminster, New Jersey, the fabled 7th floor of FBI headquarters, across Pennsylvania Avenue at William Barr's Department of Justice, and 3 blocks east in the hallowed chambers of the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals. Biden's ominous stalling on his Veep pick sends the signal to casual observers that this whole nomination pudding remains badly unbaked. Surely a few not insane party higher-ups must know that Uncle Joe is not up to actually hitting the campaign trail. They don't dare imagine what will happen as he's wheeled out to face those sparse crowds of dog-faced pony soldiers assembled in middle school cafeterias across the land. Some sort of rolling debacle for sure. Shouting matches, push-up contests, and moments of humiliating aphasic blankness. Is it back to basement then? I guess so. But what about those debates Biden signed on for? They'd never permit him to show up live. Instead, citing possible COVID-19 exposure, they'll proffer a virtual Zoom hookup, and once again, Biden will be rigged with the trusty earpiece to be fed his lines. Or they'll cook up some other excuse and just pull him out altogether. The foregoing assumes that Biden remains the Democratic Party's candidate for president, which is assuming a lot. Meanwhile, I'd like to see some aerial drone footage of the parking circle at Hillary Clinton's Chappaqua, New York hideaway this week. The limos coming and going, the CNN mobile vans parked on the grass with a tangle of cables running up to the house, the coup to end all coups. And what of the mysterious action in Bedminster, New Jersey, Trump's hideaway? He made the enigmatic remark last week at a campaign stop in Ohio, I have a lot of rich friends. You won't see me for a while. Rumors abound in the non-seditionist news media that something ugly is about to drop. Something perhaps that might bust open a suppurating fistula of deep state corruption, of which Russiagate was one mere subsidiary side pool of sepsis. Something that perhaps involves the evidence trail of money laundering that emanated out of Ukraine during Barack Obama's second term, a whole fetid, reeking dumpster load of evidence stealthily gathered under the radar by Rudy Giuliani these many months, of which the roles of Joe and Hunter Biden are already richly documented, but which may involve many other government poobahs of both parties. And I say evidence because as a skilled former federal prosecutor, Giuliani knows the difference between aspersions and proof. Was Trump intimating back in Ohio that it's duck and cover time? Attorney General Barr sat through a leisurely chat with Mark Levin on TV last night, a curious hour of understatement and elision, especially concerning the momentous matter of U.S. Attorney John Durham's way overdue actions in the Russia collusion hoax. Levin dropped the ball so many times in his questioning that it seemed deliberate, for instance, failing to ask whether Barr had detected any prosecutorial misconduct in the pursuit of General Michael Flynn. There's plenty of reason to suppose that Robert Mueller's lawyers royally misbehaved in that case, colluding with FBI Director Christopher Wray to withhold a ton of exculpatory evidence, even to this day. There are plenty more reasons to suppose that the entire Mueller investigation was a knowing, seditious sham, and that several of his team members, e.g. Andrew Weissman, Jeannie Rhee, Brandon Van Grack, Zainab Ahmad, Aaron Zebley, plus U.S. Attorney Tanisha Gauhar, and possibly Mueller himself, deserve to be indicted for their efforts to overthrow a president. And of course, there's a long list of other now well-known characters in the DOJ, FBI, CIA, and other festering places who played a role in coup-orama. Speaking of General Flynn, his mandamus petition comes before an en banc session of the D.C. Court of Appeals on Tuesday. It's hard to see how they can get around their earlier three-judge panel's order under a mandamus petition for D.C. District Judge Emmett Sullivan to vacate the case, as now demanded by the federal prosecutors who brought it in the first place. We won't rehearse the tedious legal arguments except to say that where there is no prosecution, there is no case, and Judge Sullivan has no standing to act as prosecutor himself under the separation of powers in the Constitution. But in these dark days of a weaponized judiciary with its lawfare henchmen grubbing away in the shadows, there's no telling what bad faith gears may be turning in that mill. So buckle up for what all of a sudden looks like an action-packed week. Lay in some tonic water and gin for both COVID-19 relief and some self-prescribed anesthesia as America unleashes its dogs of war upon itself. There's a long piece in Matt Taibbi's Substack called The Spies Who Hijacked America by Stephen Scraggs, PhD, as a doctoral candidate at Cambridge, working under, quote, FBI, unquote, informant. Stephen Halper, I had a front row seat for Russiagate. This is a very odd story. I'll just give you a taste of it. Global scandals now labeled Russiagate, Spygate, and what President Trump calls Obamagate shook the political world, but hit me closer to home. I'm the reason the so-called FBI spy at the center of Spygate, Stephen Halper, met Carter Page, the alleged Russian asset in Russiagate's Crossfire Hurricane investigation. On May 19, 2018, this realization blinded me in London as I was about to fly out for my wedding. The New York Times, NBC News, and other sources had outed my PhD supervisor, Stephen Halper, as a spy known to the United Kingdom's MI6 intelligence service as the Walrus. It didn't seem real. Could a former professor I once trusted as a mentor have betrayed his word, profession, and country to start these disasters? I'd moved to England to pursue an academic career and leave DC's politics behind, only to have my PhD supervisor throw me back into the most outrageous political firestorms I could imagine. Just my luck. Then an even worse question began nagging at me. Did I unintentionally light the match that started it all? As I started to piece together what happened over the next few months, I realized something. The stories that the New York Times, Washington Post, and others were pushing didn't add up. Many seemed planted to cover up or advance the agendas of several individuals whose tentacles secretly ran through these scandals and who each had long-standing ties to intelligence services like the FBI, CIA, and MI6. I call these individuals the Cambridge Four, after, of course, the famous communist spy ring, which began in the 1930s and was not fully exposed until what? The 1980s or even the 1990s. Is that how long it's going to take for us to get to the bottom of Russiagate? I mean, the Soviet Union, that was, of course, is completely made up. Oh, you remember this? In his Yusuf Goebbels' greatcoat, goes up to the big bug, the brain bug, and he has telepathic powers, and he puts his hand on the brain bug, and he says, "It's afraid." Yeah, well, I think of that when I see this preposterous story, the New York Times, called "Unwanted Truths Inside Trump's Battle with U.S. Intelligence." Apparently, they have a sacred wall there at CIA headquarters, weeping. Yeah, weeping. Apparently, these hardened CIA officers were so put out by Trump's lack of deference, I don't know, to their tremendous sacrifice, that they began weeping. I am not, as they say, making this up. You might remember that a few weeks ago on the book club, I talked about Tim Weiner's book about the CIA, Legacy of Ashes. And the CIA should consider itself lucky that it was not closed down years ago. Such has been the nature of its just continued failures. I mean, has the CIA ever got anything right? I'm going to read, just to let you know that I'm not making this up. So Trump, January 21st, he gave a little speech there and proceeded to unleash one of a stream of consciousness diatribes, as opposed to Joe Biden, who unleashes a stream of unconsciousness diatribes. Probably almost everybody in this room voted for me, he declared. He complimented himself on his pick for Secretary of Agriculture and admonished the Bush administration for not having seized Iraq's oil after invading the country. He bragged about his inauguration speech and repeated his false claims about the mammoth crowd it attracted and his record number of appearances on the cover of Time magazine. He questioned the judgment of whoever it was who had chosen to build the CIA headquarters lobby with so many columns. I was literally in tears, one senior agency official at the time told me, as I watched him standing in the most hallowed place we have, so disconnected, talking about himself, asking why our building had columns. A second agency veteran angrily characterized Trump's speech as a near desecration of the wall, adding, "I'm tearing up now, just thinking about it." Well, perhaps these CIA officials should tear up when they consider how many agents or operatives they had in foreign countries who they sent needlessly to their deaths. Perhaps they should tear up about that. Trump's hostility was not purely a matter of self-interest. As a candidate, he often railed against the foreign policies of his predecessors, Democrat and Republican alike, in particular the Iraq War, a debacle that was inseparable from the failures of the intelligence community. After it was reported in December 2016 that CIA had concluded that Russia interfered with the 2016 election on Trump's behalf, his transition team released a press statement declaring, "The same people that said Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction." Once Trump was in the White House, a former Trump administration official recalls, "I cannot tell you how many times he randomly raised the Iraq War, like it morally offended him." He believed the intelligence community purposely made it all up. Can you imagine being morally offended by the Iraq War? Wow, that Trump fellow has some weird priorities, wouldn't you say? So Trump has decided to do business without Congress. Power line rights. President Trump says he will sign an executive order to ease the suffering of those harmed by the pandemic-related shutdowns and stimulate the economy. Congress has failed to agree on a new package to accomplish these things. Trump's executive order would include 4 components. 1, a payroll tax holiday until the end of the year. 2, an extension of enhanced unemployment benefits until the end of the year. 3, an extension of the eviction moratorium for federal subsidized housing. And 4, a suspension of student loan payments until further notice. Well, how about that? Isn't Trump supposed to be the do-nothing COVID president? Well, he's done more than Congress. Questions surrounding the legality of accomplishing at least some of these things via executive order. Trump's response to that might be, "So sue me." There are also questions about the fiscal impact of some of the measures, at least for those who still care about the national debt. Yeah, let's pretend that anyone cares about the national debt. In addition, there are questions about the efficacy of a payroll tax cut and the wisdom of extended generous unemployment benefits. However, as a political matter, Trump's move looks like a masterstroke. Since the days of FDR, the public has always seemed to approve of presidents who act to ameliorate suffering while Congress diddles. A flurry of activity, even of the futile or potentially counterproductive kind, makes a president look energetic and caring. In this instance, Trump's move might well force congressional Democrats to reach a deal. That outcome, too, would be a political win for the president. And Trump has now signed the order. The obvious displeasure of the Washington Post is further evidence that Trump has made a smart political move. Well, yes, the Democrats said, yeah, we're going to throw in all this stuff that has nothing to do with coronavirus, including releasing violent prisoners. And, we're going to make you sign on to this because otherwise we're going to blame you for everything. It's all your fault. Uh, and somehow he got away around this. There's someone who writes for the Washington Post and appears on CNN. He is from Nigeria. His name is Toulouse Olorunipa. And he tweeted August the 9th, Trump has regularly pivoted to signing executive orders with great fanfare after failing to negotiate legislative deals that would have broader and more long-lasting impact. It's a far cry from the 2016 campaign where he cast himself as the ultimate deal maker and negotiator. So is this fellow just being dishonest, or is he that obtuse? I responded, did you miss the bit where the Democrats declared war on Trump, claimed he'd stolen the election at Putin's behest, and insisted he is not the legitimate president? It was in the papers, especially your paper. And so who's the VP going to be? Well, this could be significant. Susan Rice sells Netflix shares ahead of Biden's VP announcement. Yes, Susan Rice was named a Netflix director after she left the Obama White House because she knows so much about business. She knows so much about streaming media. She knows so much about the entertainment industry. Let's see. She sold some of her shares of the video streaming company worth $305,000. As speculation swirls, she is among the candidates to be Biden's running mate. A spokeswoman for Rice said the sale was unrelated to politics and was made under a stock trading plan she filed more than 3 months ago under SEC rules. Ambassador Rice's sale of a fraction of her Netflix stock has nothing to do with VP speculation, Aaron Pelton said. How did she end up with all this stock, by the way? She wasn't making all that much money working for the Obama White House. Was she? Rice's net worth was somewhere between $14.7 million and $28.5 million. How does that happen? According to a 2016 financial disclosure statement she made as President Obama's National Security Advisor. Those assets do not include her 2 homes and her husband Ian Cameron's inherited wealth, which could make their family assets significantly larger. Doing well by doing good, they call it. Susan Rice, let's see, Rhodes Scholar. Now, as you know, because you've heard me say so, that this is a sure giveaway. Because trying to think of decent people who have been awarded a Rhodes Scholarship since what? After 1950, after 1960? Oh, she was at McKinsey. The Kennedy School at Harvard, and then the NSA. If she is nominated as Biden's VP, and God forbid Biden is elected president, she will be as close as this to the Oval Office. The deep state will no longer have to deal with any more hindrances because one of their own will be in charge. Willie Brown, who was, shall we say, Senator Kamala Harris's mentor, had a strange piece advising her not to accept a VP role, that she should hold out for Attorney General. Is this really the best and the brightest? Steve Saylor writes, with Karen Bass, an obscure LA congresswoman, starting to fade in the Biden VP hunt due to her Fidel Castro worship likely being inconvenient in the purple state of Florida, the 2 most prominent black women left appear to be Rice and Harris. Neither appear to be close to 50% sub-Saharan by DNA. Harris is half Tamil, and her Stanford economics professor father is from the Malcolm Gladwellish mulatto middle class of Jamaica. Rice is also half Jamaican. Rice has a white husband, and her Trump-supporting son, the president of the Stanford Young Republicans, is pale. Rice is an absurd choice for VP. Unfortunately, her track record is poor. Libya, 2011. If you read about her response to what happened in Rwanda, say, she doesn't seem to have the calm that she seems to be far too emotionally invested in these things. That is to say, that she is dangerous. The U.S. is no-fly zone. Sailor rights obviously meant that the mighty U.S. was committed to the overthrow and murder, as it turned out, by sodomization of Colonel Gaddafi. In turn, this murderer, who had made a deal with Italy's Berlusconi to reduce sub-Saharan migration through the Mediterranean, led to the ensuing migrant crisis. So Rice's record of decision-making is catastrophic. On the other hand, Rice's private life appears to have been decorous. Her one marriage at age 28, 2 kids, still married. In contrast, Harris started her career by learning the true essence of politics while serving in various positions under master politician Willie Brown. These included 2 essentially no-show jobs that he gave her that was paying, I believe, over $70,000 a year. Breitbart points out that Susan Rice is the deep state running mate. It's an odd choice, says Joel Pollack, because she has never held elective office and has little popular appeal. Her record of foreign policy is one of astonishing failure, from the Rwandan genocide to the Benghazi terror attack. Her main advantage is that she's been loyal to the Democratic Party establishment and the deep state. Through Rice, the Clintons and Obamas could wield power in a Biden administration. Among the contenders, Rice has the most extensive record of federal government service, having been a UN ambassador and national security advisor for Obama and Assistant Secretary of State for African Affairs under President Bill Clinton. Oh yeah, remember that factory in the Sudan that was bombed? It was supposed to be some sort of a terrorist outlet. It turned out to be making aspirin and the like. Guess whose decision that was? That was Susan Rice. Let's see. In a quote for a 2002 book written by Samantha Power, yeah, another one of those peaceful women. Remember when we were told that, if we had female leaders, we'd have fewer wars? Hasn't worked out that way, has it? Rice stated in her attempted defense of the Clinton administration's inaction in response to the genocide that was taking place in Rwanda in 1994, quote, "If we use the word genocide and are seen as doing nothing, what will be the effect on the November congressional election?" Albright, Anthony Lake, Warren Christopher, and Rice were all part of a coordinated effort not only to block UN action to stop the genocide, but to work behind the scenes to memos. No, I won't go into Benghazi. I'm sure you all know, but I didn't. What difference does it make now? Clinton famously said about why this attack in Benghazi happened. It turned out it was some video that no one had ever seen, and she just held fast to that. Look, KMG, worldly for right-wing talk radio host, to question. Stelter said, "Let's go on a trip together to a totally alternative universe. You never hear what's happening there unless you tune into right-wing talk radio." You see, he's dipping back. He's dipping back to the Clinton administration after the Oklahoma City bombing. What was the phrase that was used? What's happening there unless you tune into right-wing talk radio, but you need to know what they're saying because the most popular, most powerful talkers in the country have trained their sights on Joe Biden. But why would they do that? He's only the man the polls tell us. Look, whether you like Biden or not, this stuff is offensive and otherworldly. You mean like when CNN talked at great length about the size of Donald Trump's penis? Remember that? That wasn't other offensive and otherworldly. No. And Biden is striking. That is why we are keeping, I believe he's working out of a nursing home, or is he's falling apart. He's just falling apart. Running America within 3 months after he gets sent to the long rest he has worked for all of his life. A blanket over his hips, round-the-clock sweets, around-the-clock care. The man needs the care right now. I pity the man. After pointing out Biden rode a bike over the weekend, Stelter partisanship. CNN has certainly never been obtuse. Yesterday, Joe Biden, or whoever is in charge of his Twitter account, tweeted, "It's been 6 months. We must continue the work of tackling systemic racism and reforming policing." Who was vice president when that happened? That would be Joe Biden. Who was president when that happened? That would be Barack Obama. We weren't hearing a lot about systemic racism or white supremacy from them and the need to defund or reimagine the police. Why not? Why weren't we hearing that? James Galliano responds, Michael Brown committed strong armed robbery of convenience store in Ferguson, then violently attacked a police officer. Obama Justice Department, led by AG Eric Holder, investigated this officer-involved shooting, determined justified use of deadly force. Why gaslight this? Well, I guess that Joe Biden is not going to be any less idiotic on this than Hillary Clinton was. Mothers of the movement, in which Mike Brown's mom was there and Trayvon Martin's mom was there, and there were others. Obviously, there was no session called Fathers of the Movement because they don't have any. But is in favor of insurrection. It's that simple. You can't deny it. Let's have a look at the chat. Okay. What, maybe a slight bit of KMG? I don't know. Okay. A slight bit where? What? Dennis Dale, imagine that. I understand the peacefulness was intense in Chicago last night. Pair this with a strong response to the insurrection, and they'll still steal the election. Yeah. Well, they're going to try. I mean, they always try. Whether they'll get away with it, I don't know. Rice is the plausible heavyweight, says Dennis Dale. Yeah, in terms of government service. But you remember the debate in 2016 when Hillary Clinton was going on about her experience, and Trump said it's bad experience. Yeah, Susan Rice she's just constantly getting America involved in quagmires. Wasn't that supposed to be one of the lessons of Vietnam? The #1 lesson of Vietnam is don't get involved in a quagmire. But the liberals love quagmires now. Okay, Failsafe is being shown on Movies 2 here in Detroit. The Matador, it's me. Failsafe, which was a best-selling novel before it was made into a movie, it was one of the reasons why Stanley Kubrick did Dr. Strangelove, because it enraged him. Oh, yeah, he accidentally took out Moscow, so I'm going to order our own armed forces to destroy New York City, and obviously no American president would ever do that. If you read, I haven't read Failsafe for decades, but it gives you real insight into liberal thinking. It really, really does. As I recall, there's also a rather amusing description of Henry Kissinger. Not, they don't call him Henry Kissinger, but I guess the fact that Henry Kissinger, looking as he does, was betting women like Jill St. John, people were impressed. They were impressed then, and I suppose they're impressed now. Debrea says, I can see Trump draining the swamp during his second term. Well, I mean, what are the Democrats going to do? I mean, they've really run out of options now, and all this talk about the military intervening, I mean, it demonstrates that. It really demonstrates that. That what, they're going to make a few calls, get together for coffee with some members of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Is that how they think it's going to work? And they're going to take Trump out. Yes, Rice was all over Libya. She's an affirmative action disaster. Well, she is a Rhodes Scholar. Of course, Bill Clinton's a Rhodes Scholar, too. It's hard to tell. It's, you know, when you ask the question, is Susan Rice affirmative action? Well, she's been stupid in the way that all of these people are stupid. So as I say, it's hard to tell. Rice's working mom shtick superior to Kamala's MILF shtick. Yeah, of course, the media, they never really got around to paying much attention to the fact that neither of Kamala Harris's parents were American, that she appears to have been an anchor baby, that she was educated in the city of Montreal from the age of 6 to the age of 18. She graduated from Westmount High School. And that is to say, she's not very American, is she? Okay, what else do we have here? Alex DeLarge says we can disagree with a person's politics while still acknowledging their intelligence. Yeah, I suppose, except that, you know, where's the evidence of it? Again, you know, Condoleezza Rice. You know, apparently Condoleezza Rice is very good at playing the piano. That's genuine skill. In terms of her foreign policy expertise, again, disastrous. Absolutely disastrous. Oh, Walrus Libertarian says Democrats have shown they are willing to do anything. Hauper says Soros, the fringe left, and street mobs are wrecking it for the DNC, but they may be too demented to realize it. There was an incident a couple of weeks ago where some academic, I believe, he lost his job because he'd written a paper pointing out that the post-Martin Luther King riots in America in 1968 were very bad for the Democratic Party. And I don't know, is that considered to be, you know, racist? Maybe it is. Maybe it is. We hear about the race tightening. It's hard to tell. I don't know whether I trust any of these polls, but it could be there's a sense that Biden is not getting the enthusiasm that they want. So they have to start scaring people with, oh, you know, Biden could lose. Okay, let's talk about sheer, unabashed insanity. Many stories about that, but I picked one from Breitbart by Tom Cicada. Brooklyn College professor of math education. So is professor of math education the same as being professor of math? Because I'm getting the impression that it isn't. Lori Rubel argued this week on Twitter that the mathematical equation 2 + 2 = 4 reeks of white supremacist patriarchy. Trump's tweet was retweeted and promoted by several academics at universities and colleges around the nation. According to a report by Campus Reform, Rubel tried to make the case this week that basic math is white supremacist. The tweets are part of a larger trend in recent scholarship by American academics, many of which have argued that objective truth is a social construct. Well, you know, if objective truth is a social construct, you go back to what Roger Scruton said about Nietzsche, that if there's no such thing as truth, why should I listen to you then? Oh, you're the guy who's telling me there's no such thing as truth. You know, Scruton said, you know, people say things like this, don't believe them. Along with the, of course, math is neutral because 2 + 2 = 4 trope and the related and creepy, creepy, math is pure and protect math, reeks of white supremacist patriarchy, Rubel added. I'd rather think on nurturing people and protecting the planet with math in service of them goals. Several academics from institutions around the nation chimed in. Harvard PhD candidate Kareem Carr suggested that math should be reevaluated because it was primarily developed by white men. People say it's subjectivism to ask if math is Western. I don't get that. It's an objective fact that some groups were more involved in the creation of modern math than others. They may have been trying to make it objective, but it's not stupid to ask if they actually succeeded. Yeah, the age of reason is over. We are now in a terrifying age of magical thinking. Why is Kareem Carr seeking a PhD from Harvard in this field when he thinks that it is, racist, that it's simply a construction of white men, and of course white men are bad. Let's see. James Lindsay responded, it's certainly the case, and the woke need to be held firmly to the point that feats of engineering like space travel and rocketry utterly dependent upon accepting stable meanings of mathematical statements like 2 plus 2 equals 4 as objectively true, not mere accidents of culture. Well, I wouldn't have gone with space travel or rocketry. I would have gone with your house or bridges or roads, things which are closer to people. But okay, so Lori Rubel, she said something very provocative on Twitter, and she got some robust responses. She is not happy about this, not happy about all. So how do you feel about one of your agents emailing this message to me? Nationwide, we're on your side. Never. Obviously, for the sake of manners, after all this, he signed his email. And here's the offending email. Reality 101. Hetero equals continuation of human species, not hetero equals extinction of human species. Have XY equals man, have XX equals woman. 2 plus 2 equals 4. The earth is round. All lives matter. You need mental help, get it, and stop your hateful rhetoric. Now, obviously, claim that she's hateful rhetoric, that's a claim. You need mental help, that's a claim. All the rest of these things, well, I suppose all lives matter could be considered a claim, but until, I don't know, the day before yesterday, that's what we were instructed to believe. All the rest of it, these are facts. But she finds this deeply, deeply disturbing. And her Twitter feed is it's just a mine. It's I see, Kareem didn't wake up in the morning and try to come 7p with a 2 plus 2 equals 5 explanation. It started when a teacher said 2 plus 2 equals 4 is colonial thinking, for which you got called out on. A large proportion of left-leaning math Twitter then started to come up with ways for 2 plus 2 equals 5. And someone named ZU responded, can we please say her name? Brittany Marshall should be offered postdocs, professor jobs, grants, and not have to silently endure the harass and then watch her disruption on colonialized maths get colonized by other mathematicians. Again, this is a surplus of capitalism that I've talked about before. The only way people like Lori Rubel managed to get her position, and the only way that something called math education got to be a thing, got to be a university department, is there was simply so much money floating around, and stupid things had to be invented to sop up the extra money. But the money is gone. The money disappeared in 2008. The money's being borrowed now. So Lori Rubel can expose her insanity to the world, and she's not the only one. She tweeted, so apparently this Twitter thread classified as news. This is not about math. This is about me using my voice to call out white supremacist patriarchy. Turns out the white guys don't like that. Oh, and apparently she's a WNBA fan, and that's a shocker. This is the kind of misogynist crap that the WNBA players consistently have to put up with. Either he's talking to me with professional accolades anyone would be proud to claim, or to Sue Bird, who has won only 4 Olympic gold medals. Yeah. The United States women's basketball team, playing pretty much any other women's basketball team on earth, is rather like, I don't know, Russia getting into a war with Georgia, say, or an elephant getting into a dispute with a mouse. Honestly, nobody cares. Nobody cares. But of course, female basketball players are just as good and probably better than male basketball players. And it's the sinister patriarchy that has us thinking differently. Okay, in more stupidity news, NASA to remove insensitive and harmful names. This is from Tunisie Soir, okay. Distant cosmic objects such as planets, galaxies, and nebulae are sometimes referred to by the scientific community with unofficial nicknames. Oh dear. As the scientific community works to identify and address systemic discrimination and inequality in all aspects of the field, it has become clear that certain cosmic nicknames are not only insensitive, but can be actively harmful. NASA is examining its use of unofficial terminology for cosmic objects as part of its commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. Apparently, it doesn't have much of a commitment to space travel anymore. As an initial step, NASA will no longer refer to planetary nebula NGC 2392, the glowing remains of a sun-like star that is blowing off its outer layers at the end of its life, as the Eskimo Nebula. Eskimo is widely viewed as a colonial term with a racist history imposed on the indigenous people of Arctic regions. Most official documents have moved away from its use. NASA will no longer use the term Siamese twins galaxy to refer to, well, two of them, a pair of spiral galaxies found in the Virgo galaxy cluster. Moving forward, NASA will only use the official International Astronomical Union designations in cases where nicknames are inappropriate. Nicknames are often approachable. Oh, the Horsehead Nebula. Okay, they'll find some way to get rid of that. I remember talking about NASA with Colby Kosh from the National Post some years ago when we worked together. And I joked that NASA couldn't fly. And he said, oh, NASA could fly to Martinique. The problem would be getting back everyone on board alive, which I thought was pretty good. Oh, yes, and consider poor Chista Kakpur, who is, she's very upset because I gather that Western men do not find her attractive. She is Iranian. Ben Smith, Six Smith, tweeted, I'm learning about a dangerous subculture of self-entitled, resentful people called incels. And Kakpur had tweeted, literally every South Asian and Middle Eastern man dates this exact girl most of their life. And there's a picture of a cute redheaded girl. And apparently she does not like this. And I gather she does not like this because it is not reciprocal. She seems to have just a dreadful misunderstanding of what men are looking for in a woman. She tweeted, I love chatting up these girls at parties. Oh, hey, Ali, I was just hearing about your girlfriend's mom's summer house cut dress and flee only after I teaching myself 4th century Greek. Yeah, that's the way to get the men. Just talk about how smart you are. And I went and saw a bunch of pictures, black or it's short and blue, the like. And of course, Lyme disease is the new exhaustion in all of my work. The thing that makes it really difficult circumstances. I'm one of those people who vision is predominant. For me, the challenge is always figuring out what people's assumptions are, almost always wrong about who I am. We have separate countries. She's 42 years old, women from Iran. Let's see, Peter MacKay, former conservative cabinet minister who's like a few years ago, very attractive woman. Indeed, I don't know, it's just a very deliberately odd about how, of course, with a lot popular with Western men and people who look like they do are not that simple. I've just seen this again and again and again, this lashing out against blonde. Your source for the latest Megan Thee Stallion news And Megan Thee Stallion's collaborative single WAP on Friday brought with it an equally vivacious music video, which has since sat at the top of YouTube's trending page. The video features a slew of famous, oh, apparently that's a name, Suki Hannah, Ruby Rose, and Kylie Jenner, who makes a dramatic 20-second appearance clad in leopard print. However, some fans aren't pleased with Jenner's cameo. Fans praised Cardi and Megan for spotlighting black and brown women, but lamented Jenner's appearance, who was often accused of appropriating black culture. Soon enough, a petition appeared on chain YouTube, Megan Hotties and Bardo Gangs. The petition's caption states, "The video was perfect until we saw Kay and I wanted to throw my phone." Those who signed the petition agree, with one commenting, "I was happily enjoying my daily cup of brown women." People actually say things like that, until that culture-stealing colonizer showed up and made me spill. Another Stuart Vulture. She doesn't remember how her own culture complexion looks. She does not look very dark in this video. She's quite an attractive young woman. I must say that. There is no attempt here, at least in this still from YouTube, by her to make herself look black or even very brown. She has rosy cheeks. Now, they may have been due to makeup, but I'm not seeing any cultural appropriation. But I don't really want to start talking about the subject of cultural appropriation, because let's look at their cultural appropriation of our culture, okay? But no, they don't want to talk about that. So there's been this meme for a few months, well, maybe longer than that, defund the CBC. CBC has had, many enemies. That's Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. It's funded by taxpayers. Still runs commercials, though. Gets away with that. It's supposed to represent Canadians, or a cross-section of Canadian opinions, and it does not. It simply does not. But they've been pushing the alphabet community so very hard. This story is a month old. I didn't see it until a couple of days ago. And again, I hardly believe it. Celebrate BC's alphabet people shining stars with BBC British Columbia. And then there's a picture of 5 people, and they do not inspire trust. Welcome to Proud to Shine, a celebration of British Columbians who are making a difference in the alphabet people community. We asked you to tell us about an alphabet person in BC who is doing big things in their community, and wow, the wow is actually there in this story. This story doesn't seem to have a byline. Oh, it's from CBC Communications. Perhaps whoever was responsible was too ashamed to attach his or her name to it. There are some real change makers in this province. CBC's Proud to Shine committee selected 5 British Columbians to create positive change in the alphabet people community by going above and beyond the call of duty. What duty? Demonstrating resilience, strength, and commitment. Making meaningful and valued contributions. Meaningful and valued to whom? Check out our amazing nominees below! Exclamation point. Brian Bone, aka Miss Gina or Gina Tonic. Get it? Gin and Tonic? Vancouver, BC. Why Brian deserves the spotlight. Brian Bone, a dedicated Richmond High School art teacher and celebrated drag queen, is leading the way toward a more inclusive school district and society at large. Motivated by experiences with bullying and homophobia, Brian vowed to be the positive queer role model he never had in high school. To follow through on his goal, he volunteers tirelessly with the school district to support safe and inclusive opportunities for Richmond's alphabet people, youth, and allies. One of Brian's greatest achievements is convincing the Richmond School Board to join the Vancouver Pride Parade, and it was no easy feat. Brian not only supports students, but also his peers. As the volunteer sexual orientation and gender identity SOGI teacher at his school, Brian mentors his colleagues, supporting their professional and personal development. When he's not in teacher mode, Brian can be found celebrating gender and sexual diversity as drag performer Miss Gina Tonic, a positive fixture in Vancouver's nightlife scene and at libraries where she presents drag queen story time for children of all ages. No matter where Brian, aka Miss Gina Tonic, goes, the spirit of inclusion and celebration of diversity falls. Let's see. Would it have been like if someone had claimed that a drag queen styling himself, Miss Gina Tonic, was in charge of sexual education at a British Columbia high school? You'd think that was some sort of paranoid right-wing fantasy, right? You would, wouldn't you? Because it just seems described as a non-binary, queer, and neurodivergent activist. I don't really know what neurodivergent means. I suspect that it is some sort of euphemism for mental illness. This person is a true pioneer for justice in their community and beyond. As a dedicated facilitator for organizations that protect citizens and the planet, Avery helps people come together to discuss important issues. A role model to so many, says nominator Gavin Summers. Okay. And then there's Kelsey Borgfjord from Williams Lake. And I don't want to misgender this person. So I can't say whether this is a man or a woman. Director for the Williams Lake Pride Society, and that must be a bustling group. How many people could possibly be involved in the Williams Lake Pride Society? Oh, this person is a pillar in the Williams Lake Alphabet People community. Okay, yeah. She's involved in creating a safe space for all people who identify as or with women. Okay, and then we got another drag queen, Tyson Cook, aka Frida Wales. Get it? Get it? Oh, an education assistant with the Kelowna School District. You noticing a theme here? And a locally loved drag queen makes waves in Kelowna's Alphabet People community and beyond. As nominee Jillian Carpick puts it, been creating a tsunami of pride positivity. Oh, she turned a negative into a positive, or he, I don't know what, when they launched Drag Queen Storytime at the Kelowna Library. And again, 10 years ago, you'd been told about Drag Queen Storytime at schools, or 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds, whatever. You wouldn't have believed it. It would have made you really angry, wouldn't it? But that's the way we live now. And here's something more recent from the CBC. I'm working to unlearn the racism I internalized as a biracial kid. Growing up in a white suburb, I saw myself through the lens of whiteness and aspired to it. Oh dear, oh dear. This is from Brandon Yan. And there's a picture of Brandon laying supine on the ground. And I had a suspicion about this young person, which I'll get to later. Okay, so this kid is half Chinese, and growing up, I saw myself through the lens of whiteness and aspired to it. It deprived me of possible futures where I could be proud of every aspect of my being. Why? Instead, I tried everything to fit in, including forsaking language, culture, dignity, and even at times, my last name. On resumes, I used my middle name, Oliver, in place of Yan. Overnight, it was much easier to get job interviews. Life rewarded me for erasing my Chineseness, because, of course, Chinese people in Canada are noted for their high rate of failure. Again, is this obtuse? Is this obtuseness? Is it deliberate? Is it learned? People born with it. So it's yes. Oh, here's the part, the second best part. And here's the thing. I don't think anyone ever told me to be ashamed of being half Chinese or mixed race. Okay. Dating brought its own challenges, and I was waiting for the other shoe to drop, and I was not disappointed. Fats, no femmes, no Asians. Oh, so there's no gay guys interested in Asians? Really? Okay. It's a common refrain on some gays for a so-called preference that some gay or bisexual men have for fit, masculine, and non-Asian. That's a terrible shame. It wasn't really until my mid-20s that I started to unpack, and heal some of this internalized racism and homophobia that I harbored within myself. Part of this process was watching my younger sibling transform into a fierce drag queen, again, by the name of Maiden China. Get it? Through this acclamation of chinoiserie, especially in the queer community, a way for me to really delve into unlearning my internalized racism. Oh, more from the CBC. Unmasking COVID Racism. Vancouver Pride Festival ends with a virtual parade and a nod to history. Our 9-year-old CBC pays for. I guess that's what Netflix pays for too. Okay, here's 2 tweets, August the 6th, from Netflix Film. While the Wachowski sisters weren't publicly out as trans while making the films, that I felt not being able to be who I was while making The Matrix. Who was stopping her? And this brings us to the concept of an egg in the trans community. An egg is a word for a trans person who hasn't realized they're trans yet. As Vox critic Emily Vanderwolf writes, The Matrix is maybe the eggiest movie ever made. Now they're taking eggs. Apparently there's going to be another Matrix movie being made, and it's going to be trans. The Wachowskis, their last 2 films have been spectacular flops. Just spectacular. There's a joke in, very nice figure, and she invites him up to her hotel room, and the other guys say, well, you know, she's going to have sex with you, because he'd said that they were going to watch Cloud Atlas. He says, how do you know? How do you know she's going to have sex? She's invited me to have sex with me. Because no one has ever got more than 5 minutes into Cloud Atlas. And your children, very interested in your children. This is from the AV Club, which is pretty much all gay all the time, even though they lost Emily Todd, now Emily Vanderwolf, to Vox. Rebecca Sugar says Cartoon Network told her not to talk publicly about Steven Universe's Alphabet People material. Steven Universe is a landmark show in the history of alphabet people representation in kids' entertainment, normalizing the notion of same-sex relationships so thoroughly that one of the show's work. She gave an interview to Paper Stevenson from She-Ra, Princesses of Power, who openly acknowledged the ways Steven influenced the later Netflix show. All gay, all the time, for the kids. Even the conversations we were having at the beginning, plans for including queer characters and relationships was only possible because Steven Universe had done it first. Look, this is working. This is getting support. Fans are into this, and it's getting this reaction. The fans, all the tweets that I've seen, it seems to be mostly women in their 30s who are carrying on about how wonderful Steven Universe is. Sugar, meanwhile, had 3 executive concerns of her own, stating their initial goal, Steven Universe, was to expand on some of the work she'd done with the characters of Princess Bubblegum and Marceline on Adventure Time. A fusion between 2 female characters, there'd be no way for Cartoon Network. With all the alphabet people talk and the trans stuff, because we have to try and sell this show to a lot of different countries, and make a fuss about it, they are not going to buy it. And she's still upset about this, apparently. Because I was the Cartoon Network. Well, let's have some happier news here. And William Shatner. Well, I talked about William Shatner not long ago, the trans thing. But there, he's in Forbes, which used to be a serious magazine about business, but now it's just clickbait and Pause Central. William Shatner tangles with trans Twitter over the word cis. And this is from someone called Equality and Other Alphabet People Issues, because, well, I guess that's woke capital. Space may be the final frontier, but even Klingons know better than to engage William Shatner in his favorite arena, the Twitterverse. For 6 days running, the actor, director, and author best known for portraying Captain James T. Kirk of Star Trek has been embroiled in a Twitter war of words, and the 89-year-old shows no sign he's ready to surrender. Shatner's oh, that's where it came. Sunny V. Brydom writing in The Advocate of 2015. Well, it doesn't get any more authoritative than 2015. Well, it doesn't get any more authoritative than that. According to Brydom, trans means across, beyond, on the other side. A cisgender woman is credited with first using cisgender. Well, that's good to know. Ahead to 2020, and Shatner is merely one voice in a chorus of cisgender people on planet Earth who complain about the word. Typically, opponents of cis resist the word so as to avoid being labeled. I'm not cis, I'm normal, goes the refrain. Okay. With sarcasm on full display, Shatner tweeted on Monday that in keeping with the times, someone calling him an old white man and a hateful bigot should also call him cis, in all caps. Yes, someone had tweeted him, "You're an old white man, so you must be a hateful bigot," is the new bigotry the kids are all about these days. You've got cis, as in old white cis man, need to stay current. He further communicated some need labels or categories to separate people in order to harass or debase them. The only time cis is used when referring to me is in that way. Do we need these labels in order to communicate? No. So those that use them when describing others are doing it for negative reasons, and this is absolutely true. Cis is only used in a negative sense, as to point out that, oh yes, some breeder objects to what I have to say, but this person's a breeder, so you can discount that. Someone called Amanda Jete Knox, yeah, seriously. It's interesting to me, oh, she calls herself the Maven of Mayhem. She sounds like a delightful person. It's interesting to me, a cis lesbian, how hard some people fight back against the word cis. It really just means you're not trans. What? It doesn't mean you can't be underprivileged or you've never had to fight for anything. It's not a slur, just a descriptor. Chill out, bros. From his tweets, it doesn't seem to matter to Shatner whether someone has 7 followers or, like Jete Knox, more than 62,000. Shatner continued, it's used as a slur and a term of harassment. If you want to use that term in your own mind to differentiate people for whatever reason, that's your right. You're using it to label me. I'm not going to object to it because I cannot fathom any positive reason to use it on strangers online. Well, good for Bill Shatner. And, oh, in show business news, more show business news, and I've been warning you people about this. Perhaps I shouldn't say you people. My devoted listeners and viewers, that keep a hold of those DVDs and Blu-rays, because there's certain companies, well, I don't know, just Apple and Disney, to name 2, that don't want you to have them. Kelly, the film stage reported in a blow to physical media, Disney has ceased 4K UHD production on catalog titles, including the Fox library. Kelly Turnbull responded, there's something decidedly sinister about buying up like a third of the media in the world and discontinuing physical distribution of it. Disney has a long history in this. They call it the vault. They deliberately create scarcity. You can't get some Disney title for years and years and years, and then Disney announces that it is available again, and oh my God, there's not much of a window here. The window's closing. Better buy it right now. The Disney's takeover of Fox should never have been allowed. This was a very serious failure of Trump's Department of Justice, Commerce Department. It's an absolute outrage. But no, see, what Disney is doing here is they don't want you to buy old classic movies. They want you to buy their new rubbish. And Mulan, the live action Mulan, they're going to charge $30 US for that, apparently. Mulan has the distinction of one of being the few movies that I've seen in a theater that I fell asleep during. Took my kids to it. And I don't know, after about 20 minutes, and it was in the afternoon, I just could not keep my eyes open. So, yeah, you want to keep hold of those DVDs and Blu-rays because once you own them, they're yours, and they can't be censored, and they can't remove the blackface scenes, or any of that stuff, or I don't know, remove the term Siamese twins because apparently it's conjoined twins. Oh, okay, I think I got that. Let's have a final look at the chat for this somewhat shorter than usual show, and once again, I'll apologize for that. Buy Songs of the South by Disney. If you see it, says Jonathan Pohl, that is one of what's called the censored 11. 11 of the most famous and some of the most beloved cartoons. I don't believe that was that ever available on physical media? Was it available perhaps on VHS a long time ago? We keep hearing that some of the censored, particularly the World War II cartoons like Bugs Bunny, Nips the Nips, that Warner Brothers has indicated in the recent past that they intend to bring out these cartoons, with terrifying warnings, and I don't know, maybe they'll hire Whoopi Goldberg. Disney did. Oh, well, these cartoons are terrible, but Whoopi says, but Disney gave me a nice chunk of change here, so I'm going to talk about context. These cartoons are terrible, but Whoopi says, but Disney gave me a nice chunk of change here, so I'm going to talk about context and the evil past, whatever. And I suppose Walt Disney could do the same thing. Yeah. Again, for decades now, if you've seen these Warner Brothers or MGM cartoons on TV, they've been censored. They've been heavily censored, and I have to give Warner Brothers, which now owns the MGM Cartoons Library, a lot of credit because they have not censored their cartoons on DVD. There's a program now that pays drag queens to visit your kids' birthday parties. Don't tell me that. Don't tell me that. KMG, no offense, but Canada sounds like the worst place on earth. Well, and I suppose to people who haven't, I remember what Theodore Darrow announced, Tables in France. France has turned so bad, blah, blah, blah. And he said, yeah, okay, I understand, but the point is, I don't know the old France. And this is the way I feel about Canada. I do know the old Canada, and everything about it has been turned un-Canadian. I suppose what's most distressing about living in this country, is cowardice of the people. There's not very many people wearing masks. Most of the people wearing masks, well, if the government forces people to wear masks all the time, will you go alone? It's a little different about 30 years ago that, look, we're not going to throw people in prison. If you go along with what the government, you will be destroyed socially and financially. That's simple. Okay, against that. Not very many people. No. Okay, that is the show for tonight. I'll be back on the air tomorrow. Okay, that is the show for tonight. I'll be back on the air tomorrow. It may change at the last minute, but there's not going to be a book club because on Friday we'll be talking about episodes 6 to 10 of Slawski's Decalogue on Theater Thursday, this Thursday. Once again, and it won't be for the last time either. But part of it, I'd appreciate it if you click on the, if you would like to support the show with a donation, which would be money. You could send me money directly through Interac at Kevin Grace at shaw.ca. And I will leave you with this. In these times of social atomization and civilizational collapse, I do dearly wish that my dear listeners and viewers manage to form some sort of genuine human connection in order to ease the burden. Good night.